Hello ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Cropper here. I wanted to do a little piece on Farm and Ranch Living magazine. This is February-March 2007 issue. And we're doing a story right now on the Peace Corps volunteer, page 40. We're looking at this story right now. How is multiculturalism similar to keeping humans in a zoo? Peace Corps volunteer. This is about a guy apparently named Ibara, I-B-A-R-R-A, from Sim Valley, California. You know how those Californians are. And he volunteered for the Peace Corps, and ended up in Africa, wouldn't you know it. So let's talk to him for a second here. I'll read the little caption for the picture first. Peace Corps volunteer Frank Ibara stands with his host in a field near Chargel village. Frank is helping farmers start to grow soy, upland rice, and watermelon. And there's Frank and his host in Africa, or in Gambia. And so I quote from, and I won't quote at length, we'll do what we need to. I'm a 24-year-old Peace Corps agroforestry volunteer from Simi Valley, California. I'm posted at Chargel village, the Gambia, where I live with a local family. The Gambia is a small, elongated country in West Africa, bounded on 3 sides by Senegal, and on its west by the Atlantic Ocean. The land along the Gambia River is mostly mangrove and scrub forests. Elsewhere, such as where I am, sandy soil covers the land. So let's take a quick look at Gambia, and I've got a globe just here for you. Grab that, and Gambia, there we are, we have Africa, and Gambia is up here, and it's impossible to see with the focus that we have available here with this camera, but Senegal is this green country here. Gambia is that little brown strip inside of Senegal. Long, narrow corridor. Be interesting to know the history of how that became an independent country, but whatever. That's Gambia. Oh, by the way, those of you who know what my library looks like, since I'll be moving soon, my library has been packed up and sent. That's what my library looks like. But there we are. Now then, where were we? Gambia. He says the soil here is not fertile. It's sandy. Locals have no choice but to farm because it's the only trade they know and the only means that they have to get food for their families. Crop yields are often poor, however. Therefore, developing sound agricultural practices is a good way to help the people. So he goes to Gambia to help the people improve their agriculture, because that's their way of life, is agriculture. Now, I've just read like the 5th and 6th paragraph, so I've reorganized it a bit. Now let's go to the first paragraph, and he says that every morning during the dry season his alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and the reason he wakes up so early is to water his garden each morning. And the roosters usually wake him up a half an hour before his alarm even goes off. The roosters all crowing. So he's not sure why he sets his alarm. So he's in this village where there's a wind-up alarm. The roosters crow. Wake him up at 4:30 a.m. or so, thereabouts. He rolls out of bed, stubs his toe. He's looking for the light switch. And then he remembers that there's no light switch because there's no electricity. So he looks for his flashlight. He finds his flashlight, stubs his toe again, finds his kerosene lantern and heads out after getting dressed. And he hopes that the kerosene doesn't attract the bees from the nearby baobab tree. Now, if there was a tree full of bees on the farm where I grew up in Utah, well, you'd do something about it. You'd get some poison at the agriculture store or whatever, the near ag co-op ag store. There's things you can do about these problems. It's not just a way of life. These people just live in squalor for no reason. Anyways, so he gets up at 5 a.m. to water his garden, and here's why he has to get up at 5 a.m. to do it. He goes to the local water pump. He takes 15 jugs, which each hold about 20 liters, and I don't know what 20 liters is. 5 gallons? About something like that. He transports them back to the garden by donkey cart. Maybe about 7 or 8 gallons, I guess. Back to the garden by a donkey cart he uses. Automobiles are not cheap enough that they could have them in this country? I guess not. Anyways, filling the jugs takes time. You would imagine that it would take time at, guess what? A hand pump, water pump in the village square. And guess who that was installed by? Most likely the Peace Corps in the 1960s or 70s. Or in the 80s, or maybe even the 90s. Anyways, filling the jugs takes time, and the village water pump is busy in the morning. So look at this relaxed, placid agricultural village scene. You're not rushed, you're not hassled, you're not on your way anywhere in a hurry like civilized men are. What are you doing? Getting up at 5 a.m. before the sun so you can get to the village pump to get water from it. Whatever. Okay. And he says it's funny to think of it that way. A year ago I'd wake up early so I could beat the crowds at the coffee shop. But now it's the water pump. Now you tell me which way of life is better. Which way of life can you judge as superior? Now here's what's crazy. So he goes here to help the locals. And he says that ground nuts have been exported since about the 1830s and have represented as much as 95% of the value of this country's exports. So ground nuts are an incredibly important source of income for the people and for the country as a whole. 95% of the country's exports were just ground nuts. So it's important that they know how to farm well and so forth. He has proficiency in the local language. He has awareness of the culture, and he says are his fundamental tools. And then get this, he says, as an agroforestry volunteer, I have to slowly and sensitively weave my development program into the scope of local cultural practices. I have to weave my development program into the scope of local practices. I used to think the reason the rest of the world was so far behind was because they hadn't adapted our ways. And what we need to do is go show them our ways. Go show them that you shouldn't aspire to be a dancer in the local tribe. You should aspire to be a businessman. You should aspire to work 60 hours a week in a factory. You shouldn't aspire to dance. I thought we just need to show them our way of life. Come to find out, the Peace Corps is going there and specifically not importing our way of life. Specifically trying to preserve their way of life, which is a failure. Or we wouldn't be sending charity to them all the time. So, their specific policy is to sensitively weave their development program into the scope of local cultural practices. Now, if the local cultural practices have held the society back while the rest of the world is flying jumbo jets, what is so valuable that they're trying to preserve? Like other Gambian farmers, the villagers of Chargel have traditionally grown groundnuts. They've been doing this for decades on the same farmland, and the soil structure has been damaged, and there's severe nutrient depletion. What used to be fertile soil has been turned into sand. With little or no fallow land, groundnut crops produce lower and lower yields while becoming increasingly susceptible to water erosion during the rainy season. Now he goes on to talk about some of the most basic ideas in agriculture which have been in place for, in some cases, centuries in the West, and in other cases for millennia in the West, such as for just using different crops on the same land helps, but allowing the land to lay fallow for a year is a very big help too. Those have been used in conjunction or totally separately at different times by different societies. And here we have a society in Africa in the year 2000 and something. Other societies are sending jumbo jets over it every day and satellites over it every day, and are sending educated people to it on these sort of vacations. Okay, and this society doesn't yet know how to leave its land fallow. What respect can you have for that culture? And why? That's the ultimate thing. Study the culture, fine, as an anthropological endeavor, but realize that they're freaking starving to death. Okay? Their culture does not value the things that are important for human life. Why is the culture valuable? I mean, if you can value a culture that hates human life or doesn't support human life, then you can value the Nazis. There's just no difference. So, as an agroforestry volunteer, I have to slowly and sensitively weave my development program into the local culture. Now get this, he goes over some of the inefficiencies, and then he says that he wanted to make his garden more productive, and he went and got a supply of manure, and he had to go to several different places where they had a couple cows or bulls or whatever, and gather up manure, you know, every few days or a week or whatever. And it was difficult, and he had to find different sources of manure, and he spent a half a day going through 2 villages to get a couple of tons of it. But the good news about all this, he says, is that it gave him a chance to demonstrate the benefits of using manure. Now, holy cow! Jumbo jets flying overhead, satellites, atomic bombs. These people don't know that putting shit on their farm helps. Now, I don't know how the original people found it out, because it's been known in India, you know, and Mesopotamia and Egypt for a long, long, long time. Since like the time of the pyramids or thereabouts, within 1,000 years. I mean, the use of feces, animal and human, is a long-standing known benefit in agriculture. These people don't know about it. We're flying jumbo jets over their country every day, and they don't know about it. What is valuable about their culture? What is valuable about that culture? So this magazine's got this thing about this Peace Corps volunteer guy goes to Gambia, tries to spread some of the benefits of modern civilization without displacing any of the ideas of the culture. I mean, try to not offend them while telling them that the entire way that they've done business for their entire existence is wrong. Whatever. Why is their culture so valuable? Anyways, look at how corrupt it is. When we send people around the world to help other cultures, they are specifically indoctrinated to not help. They are specifically indoctrinated to go there and not try to change the culture. Leave the culture as it is. Weave your development and help programs in with the culture. Don't offend them too much. Don't want to move too quickly. You don't want to scare anybody. You wouldn't want to bring progress and productivity and bounty. I have no respect for ancient cultures. I mean, we can write about them in anthropological tracts and study them and find out what was wrong with the planet for tens of thousands of years, but to have respect for them and try to preserve them as some sort of gem or jewel is silly. It's like a zoo. It's like a human zoo. Interesting analogy. How is multiculturalism similar to keeping humans in a zoo? Let's elaborate the concept and then we'll look at it. So if you kept humans in a state of existence where you can look at them and it's strange and distant from you, and not just a state of existence, but what seems to be a wild state of existence, a nature state of existence. Keep some humans in a state of natural or nature or non-civilized existence, and look at them, and keep them there, as a value in and of itself, just for itself, not for any other reason, but just so they're there and exist. What is a human zoo? A human zoo is what's created by multiculturalism. So there's farm and ranch living giving us a multiculturalist human zoo. Fantastic. There's multiculturalism, there's a Peace Corps volunteer, and they are all full of crap.